Hello, everybody. Jess Stainbrook here with the Invisible Disabilities Association. And boy, we've got a special show today, and it's going to be fun to hang out and see what's going on. I want to introduce Wayne Cannell, who's our CEO. And hey, Wayne, how you doing today?
Hey, Jess.
Yeah, this should be a fun show. I mean, a lot of our shows are all about advocacy, and we're usually doing something that has to do with either fundraising or an event or something like that. That's then wrapped around the idea of helping people that are living with invisible disabilities.
Yeah, so it's you talk about invisible disabilities, and everybody has a story, right? It's invisible disabilities are really that invisible symptom of an illness or a disability or a pain that we don't see. And what's exciting is that since we all have stories, I'm really looking forward to hearing the stories on the show and why there our guests are not only passionate about what we're going to be talking about. We haven't shared what we're going to be talking about, but passionate about also their friends, their family members, their coworkers, and why what gives them an extra drive, right? And so we're pretty excited about that as well, and just honored to be here.
Yeah, no, this will be a lot of fun. Well, let's kind of bring everybody in. Hey guys, can they all see us okay?
Yeah.
There, awesome. There we go. Well, we're doing these guys are doing a special event that they partnered with us, and it's called The Push, and it's a skateboard relay across the United States. So, shucks, I don't even know where to start. I think I'll start with Jack and kind of give us a little brief background of what's going on. And then, guys, the whole idea is just to kind of kick in of, my goodness, what's it take to do this? How did you guys get connected and all that? But Jack, kind of kick us off as to the basis and the foundation of what we're seeing.
Well, I've done a few cross country trips over the past almost 50 years. And recently, last year, I've been working on a film script inspired by my first push in '76. And as I was working on it, I kept thinking to myself, when we did it those first few times, we were just a bunch of knucklehead guys. It's like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's skate across America. And then I started wondering, now that long distance skating is a sport, and these athletes, these guys are athletes, they train for it. And I started wondering, how fast could they do it? And I kept daydreaming about it. And one day I just decided to send an email to these four guys and say, hey, what do you think? Would you be interested in doing it? And they all responded positively. And here we are, a week or so away from getting going on this thing.
Well, that's awesome. So I don't know, guys, Jack, why don't you introduce us to your team here?
Okay. Sitting next to me is my son, Dylan Smith, who skated cross the country on the 2013 team when he was 21 years old, I believe. And then we've also got Miles Kipper and Andy Andras and Rick Stubblefield and Paul Kent. I've met a couple of them. I haven't met the other two in person, but we've known each other for years online and through the sport. So I'm really looking forward to this team. I think it's going to be a great team.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, guys, I feel like I'm in kind of the skateboard Hall of Fame here. So maybe let's do a little introduce yourself and maybe some background so people can know who you are. And I'll just start. Miles, why don't you start?
Oh man, I gotta start off. Sure. All right. Yeah, my name is Miles Kipper. I have been a longboarder for my whole life. I was too tall to shortboard. The ground is a long, hard way away. I got involved with the distance community in 2019 pretty heavily when my mother passed away, and I was just really struggling. And I was kind of found a channel in skateboarding and was open to this wide world of wonderful skaters. Since then, I've done a number of races that we host all over the country, and I'm currently the Clydesdale, so the heavyweight distance champion for the 24-hour Ultraskate, which is an event in Miami. I did 241 miles a few years ago. That's it.
That's it. Yeah, that's kind of amazing. I'm not going 241 miles anywhere without driving. So, Rick, how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Rick Stubblefield. I'm oldest guy out of the bunch at 57. Yeah, I started skateboarding probably back in 1976 when I was a kid. My family moved back from Juneau, Alaska, and a friend of mine was cruising down the street on a skateboard. And I don't even know if I remember seeing a skateboard at that point. And I chased him down and learned that, I think that day, how to ride. Yeah, didn't always ride through the years. I kind of I grew up in Oregon, so canoeing was a big thing for me, and I got involved with that. I even raced canoes for a bit. And then my wife and I moved to Colorado in 2003, and with all the sunshine here and everything, a friend of mine actually gave me a longboard, and just as a gift. And I thought, well, I'll give this a try. And just my nature, I just love to get out and race and go as fast as I could and as far as I could. So yeah, I found out about through the Skate International Distance and Supercross Association. I found out that they had sanctioned races, and I thought, well, gosh, let me give this a try. So 2016, I dipped my toes in the water and found a couple races in Oregon, a little 5K and 10K called Push in the Woods, and gave that a go and just had so much fun. It was just such a wonderful community. Everyone was just so nice, and just had a blast with it. So I thought the next year, to talk to my wife, Wendy, who's my skate manager. I said, hey, what do you think if we went out and did a little tour and tried some of the different races around the country, and did that, and just had a crazy bunch of fun doing that. So yeah, just a great group of people with that Skate IDSA group, yeah, just too much fun. So.
It's interesting because I can tell you, I know we've talked with Jack before, but I remember the first skateboards, and it was like, yeah, I don't think I would be riding it very far. You hit any kind of rock in your toes. You're right. There were little short boards. And I remember when the new mag wheels came out, that were cut, and the guys had the bigger boards and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I hope I can save up for one of those.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I think the board I learned how to ride was one of those Nash boards with the clay wheels, and it was rough, but just the thrill of doing it was fun. But yeah, once the newer urethane wheels came along, it was a whole nother world. It was great.
I remember getting my first urethane wheel. We used to do a thing because we were on the East Coast, and we would go to the Jersey Shore at the end of the summer, and people were emptying their pools, right? So we would volunteer to empty their pools and paint them, but we would skate in them for like a week before we did all the work. So
there you go.
It was really a lot of fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, thank you. Andrew, I know you're traveling. Can you give us a little talk about who you are and what's going on there?
Actually, is Paul Kent on with us?
Paul is on with us. He can go next.
Let Paul go next. I'm 5 minutes away from pulling over.
Oh, okay. No worries. Great. Paul, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Paul. And I've been actually started longboarding probably in like 2004. I was more into downhill freestyle, actually, if anything. And started doing downhill skateboarding, was pretty decent at starts, and I would commute a lot. And then around 2007, I was invited to a push race in Vancouver, and I didn't have money to get there, so I skateboarded to it, which is about about 600 miles, like through the Rocky Mountains and the Coast Mountains.
Wow.
With a backpack. And in doing so, I was one of the first two people to start a new genre of travel. And it wasn't very much time later, and I was racing and skateboarding through the Andes with a backpack.
It sounds like you were the original eco commuter, man.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Other things, like I think I was the first person at 250 miles on a skateboard in 24 hours. And Andy managed to snatch that away from me and got all the way up to 300. I'll let him talk about that. Sorry, Andy. And I've just I used my travels. I created videos in order to be able to afford to race, to get the sponsorship to afford to race. And then I raced until about I retired at 2013, right? I think was that Rick's first race was my retirement race. And then, and I've been coming back. I'm back now, kind of.
Nice.
Yeah, a few of the guys like Jack keep asking me to do stuff, and I can't say no to Jack. So
That's awesome. That's so amazing. Andrew, are you at a place? Do you want to talk? Or you want me to go to Wayne for a little bit?
No, I'm good now. We just arrived here, so
Okay, cool.
perfect
Well,
timing.
give us your
Perfect
intro.
timing. But my name is Andrew Andras. I go by Andy because that's just a tongue twister. 47 years young. I'm a firefighter down in Miami. Grew up a military brat. Father was in the Air Force, so we traveled around a bit. Spent a lot of time overseas in Europe, and during that, I at some point my childhood, I gravitated towards the skateboard, and just started skating, and I just enjoyed it. Outside of organized sports and stuff like that, it was kind of it was kind of fun. It was something that didn't really have any rules or any boundaries or anything like that, and that was kind of that was something very cool to me. So I've always kind of considered myself a skater, even in adulthood. And when I joined the military and the board was collecting dust in the garage, it's I was always a skater. So but yeah, and then just later in life I got into a lot of endurance sports, adventures, and stuff like that. And then I realized that there was this whole group of people that were out doing, basically endurance skateboard racing. And so it kind of married together the two, my two passions in life at the time. And one was, being a skateboarder, and the other one was, just doing really hard stuff, and really trying to challenge yourself. So, so that was it. That was the beginning of it. Next thing you know, I'm out, and I'm trying to find the craziest race that they got. I'm like, I started doing the marathons, and meeting a lot of these guys like Paul Kent that were, at the time they were the top guys setting records and all these things. And so I'm chasing along behind them, trying to figure it all out. But what I did find is the longer the race went, the more in favor it was to me for some weird reason. So I'd get into these, we'd have these stage races in some places, really neat, where you would basically race from one town to the next, and you stay the night there, and the next day you race again, and, kind of like a mini Tour de France type thing. And at that place is where I started meeting other guys that were, just as crazy as me. And then they told me that, hey, we have a race that is 24 hours long. It's how far you can go in 24 hours. So once I heard that was it for me. That was what occupied my time for, a good 4 or 5 years, was first chasing my partner, Paul Kent. He had the record at the time, 250 miles, and chasing down his record and beating that. And then subsequently every year I would continue to grow the distance on that record to a point where it was flirting with the 300 mile, which, we all kind of giggled. We thought it was a big joke, that, because if you do the math on it, it's 13 miles an hour without stopping for 24 hours to try to accomplish this 300 mile goal. So, but, a good 4 or 5 years, I kind of hardened myself and, and figured out, a lot of nutrition things, and specifically training for it. And I finally bested it, and I finished with a 309 mile was my my best 24-hour skateboard race. So
That's incredible. Well, it's great to be here with you guys. Wayne, again, I said,
Yeah.
Wayne is the CEO and the founder of the Invisible Disabilities Association. Kind of give us an intro of how do we connect with these guys, and what are we doing together here?
Yeah, so we Invisible Disabilities just hosted our first ever what we call a walk and roll-a-thon, and everybody's familiar with traditional walkathons, but we felt that why would we limit to people that are just walking or rolling? I mean, walking or running or those things. We thought, let's engage people with whatever they want to be in. I mean, think about it with people with disabilities. It might be somebody even in a wheelchair, or somebody using a walker or a scooter or something along those lines. But I thought, I want to find out the people who are doing amazing things across the US, right? Who's riding a bike, who's skateboarding, who's running. I mean, I found a marathon man who, he's run 80 hours straight, some kind of crazy thing. I'm like, what? Who does those type of things, right? Who does 24 hours on a skateboard, right? And so that's how I found Jack Smith. I mean, it was amazing. And I kept reading, I'm like, oh yeah, he went across the US once. No, wait. 5 times. And that was just incredible to me. But what was really amazing to me was what motivates somebody to do something crazy like that. Yeah, as Jack said, it's because it's the conquering the mountain because it's there, right? Or, I want to get a lot of exercise. Well, you don't do these things because you just want to get in shape, right? There's typically an underlying passion of why you do this. And so that's what we really wanted to talk about at our walk and roll-a-thon. And we called Jack one of our walk and roll legends, and really understand that he had a real passion for this. And Jack, if you could just share a couple of, you did a couple of skates for a real good reason. And you can share just a little bit about that. And I know your son who's sitting next to you actually got to participate in one of those. So it'd be awesome if you could just talk about, what about invisible disabilities and those things that impact us that gave you this the vision to move forward with a couple of these races.
Well, 2 of the trips I've done would fit very nicely within the invisible disabilities place. The first one was in 84 when we did it for MS, multiple sclerosis, which I know you're very familiar with. And then in 2013, we did it for Alzheimer's, which my father had. So those are motivating factors, especially the 2013 one. But then stepping back in 2003, 2013 was the most personal for both Dylan and I, because we did it to raise money for the Lowe Syndrome Association, because I had a son, Dylan had a brother named Jack Marshall Smith, who was born with Lowe syndrome, which was a very rare genetic syndrome. And I think, it was very motivating for me and, also for Dylan. I'll let him speak to that a bit.
In regards to the 2013 trip, I had grown up hearing all the stories from my dad about his previous pushes. I'd always wanted to do it myself. I'd always planned on doing one at some point. It's kind of short notice when I found out about it. I was living in Colorado at the time. My dad lived out here in Morro Bay, California. But I immediately, as soon as I heard about it, jumped on. I did a lot of work on the route for that one, came up with most of the route for that. Did some work with working with the sponsors, things like that. Figuring out some Chamber of Commerce meetups, the hotel situation, a few places. But yeah, it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. I can't wait to do another someday. I can't wait to be able to be the one skating in a future one. I'm really excited to be on this one, just to go along and be with legends of the distance community, guys I've looked up to and modeled some of my own skating techniques after in this push. So it's I'm really excited to be a part of this group.
Yeah, I'll tell you, thinking about what Dylan, you and Jack, it's just amazing. I mean, you honored your brother and your son in 2003, as we talked about, and your dad in 2013, and it's just amazing that to take the time to do that, right? Say this is important, and to really showcase what people are living with across the U.S. And that's why we're really excited that you guys have decided to really support Invisible Disabilities, because everybody has a story, right, of a friend or family member. And as you go across the U.S., we're so excited you're sharing that with people, because people are going to come up and say, oh my goodness, my family member lives with this, and this is amazing. You guys believe me, because that's the biggest thing about invisible disabilities is people don't believe people because they can't see it, right? And we disregard what people go through on a regular basis. And so very excited about that whole thing. In fact, as you go across the U.S., we've sent a care package out, and we're real excited about some stickers and some glow in the dark wristbands and all kinds of cool stuff. And looking forward to, as an organization, following you guys as you cross the US, and we'll be talking about it, and hoping to get people out, from a virtual standpoint out to those locations as well. So pretty exciting.
Thanks, Wayne. Well, I have, gosh, when you think about what you guys are going to do, as I understand it, you're going from Virginia to Oregon, right?
Right.
Yeah, that, again, even in a car, I'd wonder, I'd have to plan some things out, right? So my question is, how, I don't know, what does that look like? How did you guys can kick in together of what the expectations are. Like, how does the event go? How does it start? What's each day look like? Give us a little bit of rundown on that.
Well, really it starts, first finding the people who really want to get out there and do it. Every year I get emails from people saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about skating across the country," and I get a couple emails, maybe a phone call, and then I never hear from them again. But these guys that have joined up this time, they're serious guys, and they're on board. So it really starts, with the planning of the route. Once you have the team, start working on the route, figuring out how you're going to pay for this thing. But the route is really the big deal. And this trip is the first time we're going to do it, going from I'm along for the ride. These guys are going to be skating east to west instead of west to east. But it's fairly close to the route I've used a couple times, just going the opposite way. So anybody else can jump in and
so I'm just curious. It sounds like most of your trips have been west to east. Does east to west mean it's mostly uphill?
I get people saying, well, you're going to hit headwinds throughout the Midwest, because that is the prevailing wind is, east to west. Well, every trip I've done, when we get to the Great Plains, and Dylan can attest to this, on his trip he did, is no, we hit a headwind. We were all excited we thought we were going to be getting a tailwind, and we didn't. Yeah. So that.
Interesting.
Well, and I will tell you what's interesting is, Jack, when we first met you, I thought this guy skated across the whole US by himself, right? Well, tell us how that works, how a relay works, obviously. How does that work, and what's that going to look like?
We call it the leapfrog method, technique. And what happens is one skater, let's call him skater A, will begin skating in the morning. As soon as he starts skating, the car takes off, the support vehicle takes off, drives out, let's call it 5 miles in front, and stops. Skater B gets out and takes off. The vehicle waits for skater A. When he gets there, he jumps in. They drive 5 miles ahead. From that point, they end up passing skater B somewhere along the way. They stop when they get to that next 5 mile point. Skater C gets out. The car waits for skater B. So it's just, you do this rotation all day long, and it allows you to cover a lot of ground.
That's interesting. So have you guys, Miles, Rick, Andrew, Paul, have you done this kind of relay before?
I haven't myself. No, I just my personal riding. I'll put in about 14 miles to 20 miles where I ride here at home. But I've never done anything like this, a relay style. So I'm real interested to see how it's going to work out, because all of us are competitive and racers, and things like when we'll decide to shut down at night and that kind of stuff is going to be real interesting.
Well, and it's like a sprint for you, each of you, right? I mean, the reality is, 5 miles, you're like, it was just 5 miles,
Well, and that benefits me because I'm kind of a sprinter by nature. These guys can really stretch out the miles longer than me necessarily. But yeah, that benefits me because I can beat anyone across the street, I think.
Well, I tell you, if we can, I know you're leaving on June 20th, right? That's the date, right? So how cool would that be to arrive on July 4th, right? That would be what, 14 days?
Yeah, that would.
I mean, that would just be amazing to do it in 2 weeks. That would be incredible.
I'm really excited about that. I've got lots of friends and family in Oregon, so looking forward to that. If that would work out that way, it'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been around ultra marathoners before. That the guys that run oh my goodness, 50 to 100 miles a day for multiple days. And
Andy.
I know from a diet standpoint, these guys run 22 hours a day. And so I'm curious, is there sleeping? Do you special diet? Like give me some more background on that. And again, some of the things that maybe you're nervous about or excited about. Miles?
Yeah, and I speak for myself, and I think I can kind of talk for the group when I say that I've never done anything quite in this style before. We're generally where I'm skating distance. I'm going to go skate 100 miles nonstop or with limited rest. And definitely not with, 2-hour breaks every 15 miles or whatever interval we decide on. So this is as much a balance of being able to do the distance every day as also recovering and resting between pushes as to not, overtax yourself on sprints. And then when we're 13, 14, 15 hours into our 250-mile skate day, just not have anything in the tank. But besides that, distance skating is kind of just like a long eating contest. So we've got some wonderful sponsors to help us with this. There's a company called Tailwind. It's a liquid nutrition used by many endurance athletes, and they are helping us get through this one. And everybody's got their own special sauce.
That's cool. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this adventure?
So this one's interesting because it's out of the norm of anything else I've done, and I've done quite a lot of different style of endurance things, everything from adventure races that are multi-day. Funny that you were talking about the ultra marathon. I just came back from Vermont. I ran 100 miles in the Green Mountains up there, so I just got done doing that last week. And a lot of these things are they're very individual to you. They're very they're very kind of this kind of loner type thing. So here all of a sudden we have an aspect of a team. Now you're riding for somebody, with somebody. I've got the taste of a little bit of that in some of the 24-hour Ultraskates also host team format that you can relay. But yet the relay is still not this format. So this leapfrog style, this is very, very unique to this skate across America. So this is going to be something very new to all of us. Now, you just, you can rely on, your experience of, your formulas that you already kind of know, like I was telling these guys, like, I'm going to kind of treat it, the same way I do an ultra skate in the sense of nutrition of the 300 calories an hour, which you have to be consuming because, you constantly have to be eating, how much liquid you take in, stuff like that. So, this is going to be figured out, as we're doing it a little bit and just kind of relying back on, some experience of tough places you've been before. And it's neat because it's going to take basically all the tools that we have collected in our toolbox throughout the years of us doing all of our endeavors. It's going to take that whole toolbox to make this happen. And especially if you want to do it, talking about trying to finish this in 2 weeks or 14 days and come in on the 4th of July. That was initially my talk. I was like, this would be amazing to knock out in 14 days and to have basically fireworks going off in the sky as we're rolling into Newport, Oregon. There would be nothing more special than that. But in order to do that, that's almost 250 miles a day. I think Jack, when they would do it, they would, maybe knock out 100, 150 a day. Jack, how many miles usually?
Depending on which one, but yeah, I think, somewhere between 100 and 150 a day, depending on terrain. And yeah.
So, yeah, we're looking to double this. We're looking to actually double this and really kind of push the buttons here. So it'll be interesting that, it'll be almost a science experiment to the body of seeing, us to be able to endure these distances, these roadways, who knows, maybe sometimes each other, as I'm sure things will come up. But overall, I think Jack picked a pretty good team here. We're all pretty like-minded, and I think we're going to do all right there. But but no, in the end, it's this is something new to all of us too. Even with all the crazy stuff, we've all done prior in our history.
It sounds like an adventure, that's for sure. And I feel like, gosh, I'd love to join you, but I'd be the guy that we pull into this small town and be like, dude, ice cream shop. Like, we got to stop. You don't ever see that, right? That would be my side of it. Paul,
I'll tell you, one of the things I, obviously want to hear, Paul, what you're talking about. One of the things I would say is, part of this obviously is motivation, right? I mean, motivation, you're doing this event, and I want to make sure you guys have great motivation as well. And one, Invisible Displays, this is a huge impact for us. One of the things that we need, obviously we need to raise funds. That's a big part of it. We hope that we have an opportunity to do that, but visibility is also a piece for us as well. And this is a great way to show visibility for you guys and to provide motivation. As you think about friends and family members, you're like, who could I really do this for and really honor them, right? That's what we did on the Walk and Roll-a-thon, is to honor people, to remember people and support people, right? So think about it in your family, who could I really honor? I know Jack they had their son, they had the little sticker on the skateboard, right? What can you do? You think about that with other athletes, I'm sure the firefighters are this way. They've got the picture, or the military, they got the picture up in the hat, right? Type of thing. So really to provide that motivation and for you to know that you're going to have that cheering crowd, we hope worldwide, really saying, this is amazing what they're doing and here's why they're doing it, right? To really believe people, show people that have been abandoned and disregarded and stuff, which a lot of these people with invisible disabilities that follow us, they have. They've been told they're liars and fakers and those things. And we're saying, you're not, you're real, you're valuable. And we want to do this.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Well, Paul, what's your perspective on this adventure?
Well, I just wanted to quickly say I'm actually happen to be wearing a bracelet for a friend named Brandon, who he had cancer as a child. And now that that's dealt with, he suffers from seizures, and they're fairly serious. And he was actually skateboarding across Canada as I survived cancer and all this stuff. And then he had a seizure, and it was bad enough that he had to kind of relearn how to he needed to relearn how to perform a bunch of basic motor skill patterns. A bunch of motor skills patterns. Yeah. So and then he actually managed to finish. It took him I think a year and a half later, and he just wrote a book, and he's doing a book tour, and he's selling these bracelets.
Oh, very cool.
Also,
yeah, that's amazing.
You can tell by looking at the guy, right? But he, has brain trauma, essentially. Not only did he have a seizure, but while he was doing it, he hit his head too. So, anyway, yeah, as far as these sorts of trips go, in some ways it's almost my wheelhouse. I've never, what makes it really weird for me is the fact that it's supported. And what I'm most worried about is the amount of tendon load that we can perform on a faster sprint, a short leg, instead of the long game. Normally I'll go out with a backpack. Like last year I flew to Alaska and I skateboarded back home basically to Alberta. And on really rough pavement with a backpack, I was maybe doing an average of 100 to 200 kilometers a day, roughly 100 miles here and there. And that for me is easy because that's a constant low grade load, but I'm kind of worried about the spikes. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I don't know. There's, it's interesting. I don't know if you guys know that, people that live with disabilities represent the largest minority group in the world. It has no, it doesn't think about race or religion or economic status or any of that stuff. So, yeah, and so the folks that you're representing by skating it's a really powerful run for what you're doing with them. So first, thank you. And I'm curious, Paul, you just brought up a good point. Do you guys have some kind of medical team? I work in the film industry, in the TV industry. When I think, I kind of look at all you guys, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of you are going to be skating. My version would be, okay, so there must be 4 big tractor trailers, each with your own little support group / star trailer that services all your needs. But I don't think that's the way it's going to go, right? I mean, do you have medics? Do you have, like, what happens?
We've got Andy.
Andy,
We got Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a firefighter paramedic with 20 almost 27 years now of experience. So I already got the bag packed up, the medic bag, and I'm the guy. And I guess if I go down, I'll just have to explain to them how to treat me.
There you go.
No, that makes me really happy that you're along for that. That's awesome, man.
Well, I was telling you, so these are the stickers, by the way. You guys will have these these are vinyl stickers, and you got a bunch of them you can hand out. And the Invisible No More wristbands, these glow in the dark, by the way. And it'd be, I'd love to see what happens with these. It talks about being invisible no more, because that's really our mission, is that we would stop treating people differently who have disabilities and treat them the same as everybody else from a good standpoint, right? Treat them like, we all have value, right? And that's a big part of it for us, is that everybody has value, even if you've got a brain injury or maybe you're unable to do things. Some people are able, some people are unable. That's okay both ways. We want to treat them all the same. And so we're so unbelievably honored and just blessed that Jack said, hey, yeah, let's do this. Let's support invisible disabilities. And thank you, Jack, for that, really.
You're welcome. And it was just interesting timing that, you guys gave me emailed me out of the blue when I was just beginning to start planning this trip and thinking about it. And originally when I talked to these guys, I said, I don't really want to do it this time for a cause, because, it adds another layer. But after doing that interview with you guys and seeing your mission, I thought, no, let's do this. We can do this. We can have you guys involved, and hopefully we'll do some good for you.
Yeah,
So
well,
I have a question.
We can't thank you enough, man. That's really awesome. I don't know if you guys are aware, but during COVID, we actually started, we launched off with these, what I would call grassroots ID cards, right? That you can wear around your neck. And it happened to be in the middle of, while we were doing legislative efforts to make some bigger things kick off to represent people with invisible disabilities. But this card has been really powerful in that when people see the symbol, they now know that means it's somebody with an invisible disability. In other words, something you can't see, and you may not be able to know that they need an accommodation. So a lot of the things that we've done have been intentionally for people, Andrew, like yourself, first responders, law enforcement, that, you may or may not know that this person needs one more step of help to do that. So I can't tell you how appreciative we are that you guys are even, pulling us in on this to talk about it along your ride. So it's really exciting.
One story I'll share, and it's happened every time since the 76 trip, starting with the 84 trip, when we've done these relays, is the first morning when we gather and we're getting ready for that first guy to take off, and we're all kind of just standing around. I look around at the team and I think to myself, everybody's eager to get going. And I think to myself, I say, these guys have no idea what's coming. Because you just don't. Every day is going to be different. There's going to be a lot of adjustment. So it's fun to watch them as the team as we go across the country, how they grow and they adapt. On the 2003 journey, we had a younger fellow with us he was 24 at the time, and he actually ended up being the guy, kind of the glue that held the team together. Kept us all calm, calmed us down when we needed it, built us up when we needed it. So it's going to be, really interesting to bring us you four guys together, and see how it works.
Well, how about each of you give us a final thought here? And Andrew, I'll start with you.
Fun fact that I really kind of have kind of made it special for me, this whole thing, is the month and the year that Jack Smith first crossed the United States was the same month and year I was born. So I was born June 25th, 1976. And so here, 47 years later, I will be turning 47, and I will be doing the same route that he did the day I was born. So I find that special. I find it kind of a fate thing. And it was kind of like, yes, this all makes sense. And I definitely want to be part of this.
That's awesome. Thanks. Paul, how about you? Final thoughts?
Oh, God. I don't know. So like, I have limited experience with the whole notion of being disabled and nobody knowing. My son, my son has he spent the first 4 years of his life in a hospital and has heart thing, and I'm like neurodivergent, and it can be really frustrating when I'm like trying to explain that I'm like working really hard and people are just like, no, you're doing great. Like, and it's like, no, you don't understand. And that, like, can't even imagine what it's like to be maybe be criticized because you're in a handicapped spot, because maybe you're blind in 70%, right? Like, or whatever it is, and having nobody sort of acknowledge that must be incredibly devastating. If it's year after year, day after day, that must weigh on people like so heavily. Like, even with what I have going on, I find it incredibly difficult and like really demoralizing. And just, so what you guys are doing is really great. And I appreciate you guys.
Well, thanks for sharing that. You hit the nail right on the head there. People not understanding, and that's really what it's all about. Miles, how about you? Some final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I've realized over the last few years in this wonderful distance community, because there's not all that many of us out there in the world who are up for doing stuff like this, and we've become pretty tight knit across the world. And I've realized that many of us suffer from invisible disabilities or mental health problems. It's an extremely prevalent thing in our community, because you don't really do stuff like this if you've got it all together. So we've done a number of events over the years to support mental health in our community, and I'm so happy and honored to be able to take it to a wider stage and support the greater community of people who are living every day with the struggle that no one sees. So thank you guys for the support, and thank you team for showing up.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. Rick, how about your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really honored to be a part of this group. And I think it's really special that Jack decided to get along with the Invisible Disabilities as a support. I kind of have that connection to 1976 as well. That was when I learned how to skate. The same year that Andy was born, and Jack took off on that first trip. But yeah, it's just a really big honor to be a part of this group, especially at my age. I know there's probably a few dozen guys that think they could be in my spot, but yeah, I'm gonna just give it my best, and it's just really great that we're going to be finishing up in Oregon, because I lived there for about 32 years and have lots of friends and family there, so it's going to be really cool to show up with that. I've just got all kinds of emotions thinking about that last day, and just can't wait.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you.
Well, yeah.
Jack, why don't you wrap us up on this, and then I'll come to Wayne for some final thoughts from him.
I'll just say that, if somebody would have told me when we finished that first trip in 76, that 47 years later, I'd still be involved in something like this, I would have told them they're nuts. Because every time I finished one of these trips, my feeling is, man, I'm glad that's over. I don't ever want to do that again. And then within a week, I'm like, how can I do it again? And to have these 4 guys and my son Dylan involved here, after all this time, and to be doing it, for a great cause like the IDA, it just means a ton to me.
Well, thanks. That's amazing, and we're super excited to be following you guys. I think I want to figure out a way, maybe somebody can text me a location like every hour or something, man. We'll put it up on the Facebook and make it happen, man. We're super excited for what you're doing, and yeah, I can't wait to support you and see how the trip goes. Well, Wayne, why don't you bring us home? What are your final thoughts, and then you can wrap up today's show for us.
Well, one of the things this year, every year we have a theme for the organization, and this year's theme is called Care in Motion. It's about caring and doing something in action. And it's about listening, believing, and supporting. And it's taking time to listen, believing what is shared, and supporting as needed. And I think that this is absolutely what you guys are doing. You're showing true care in motion. And Paul, I love your story, and what you're talking about is how we're all impacted, right? And it does bring us to tears almost, and it motivates us because, you know what? We don't want anybody to be invisible anymore. That's really what we're about. Let's bring huge visibility to it. That's a big thing for us, is and let people know that it's okay. Having a disability it's okay, right? It's part of life, right? That's what we live with, versus it being not okay. And we need to stop thinking that way. So really thrilled. And we're going to support you any way we can. We're going to try to blast it out any way we can. But I will tell you, this podcast is called the Invisible InCourage Podcast. And InCourage, not InCourage, it's IN, because we know it takes courage. And you guys are going to be living this thing out for those 14 days, the courage to get through each leg of the race. And it's about also that courage to get through life and how you live with these things. So appreciate you being involved. We're honored, and we're excited, and can't wait to see the next step in the trip, and can't wait till June 20th.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for joining us for another Invisible InCourage program. You'll see a graphic here on the screen now that shows how to follow these guys on the push, the skateboarder relay across America. And again, we want to support them and follow them on this, and super excited for their journey. And thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you at invisibledisabilities.org.